Hello all. In the last video, we discussed the first structural directive, ngIf, along with the built-in control flow statements @if and @else. And now, let's dive into the next structural directive, ngFor, and explore its corresponding built-in control flow statement @for block in detail. So what is the use of ngFor directive? The ngFor directive is used to repeat a piece of code for each atom in a list, such as iterating over arrays, displaying lists, creating tables, and rendering dynamic content on the web. So let's understand this with an example. So first, let me create a new component for ngFor, structural directive ngFor versus for. And let me add the selector of ngFor component inside app.component.html file. Also, we need to import the same component inside imports array. So here I'll import structural ngFor directive. And as of now, I'll comment out the ngIf directive. Now save the changes and let's check in the browser. Yeah. And as we discussed earlier, the ngFor directive is used to repeat a piece of code for each atom in a list. And we can iterate a list using ngFor directive. So we will need either a simple array or an array of objects. So in this video, we will explore how to utilize ngFor directive with both arrays and arrays of objects. So first I'll define an array of employee objects, which I'll assign to a variable called employees of type any array symbol equals to array, and this contains object with properties such as emp name, emp number, emp email, and emp department, emp dept. Okay. Now let me add some dummy data to these properties. So emp name, John, employee number 101, emp email, john@gmail.com, and department IT. And I'll create two more objects. Second employee name Bob, employee number 102, employee email bob@gmail.com, and department HR. Third employee Peter, employee number 103, employee email peter@gmail.com, and employee department QA, quality assurance. Okay, so we have created one array of objects with name employees. Now let's structure our HTML document using Bootstrap classes. And to speed up the process, I'll reuse the basic layout from previous component with some minor changes. So here, example of ngFor versus for. And let me delete this. Yeah, save the changes and let's check in the browser. Yeah, here you can see example of ngFor versus for. Now we will display this employee list in a web dropdown. And to achieve this, I'll create an HTML select element and then I'll use ngFor directive to populate it with options. So select, let me add class padding 2, and inside this I'm creating an option element for each employee. And inside this I'll use star ngFor directive. And this ngFor directive will iterate over the employees array. And for each option element, I'll bind the value attribute to the employees number using the property binding. So here you can see the drop down. Now I'll write the syntax of ngFor directive. Let me copy this employees variable from here and I'll paste it here. So now here we need to create local variable with keyword let emp of employees. And I'll bind the emp number to this value property. Okay. Now we can access all the properties of this employees array. Like here, we have accessed employee number with local variable emp. So similarly here, I'll display the employee name and email using string interpolation syntax like emp name dash emp email. And one more thing, in order to use ngFor directive, we need to import common module in imports array. And it will import from @angular/common module. Now let's check in the browser. And as you can see here, the dropdown now display both employee name and employee email address. So here, as per requirement, you can bind any property of object. So for example, here, instead of employee email, you can bind employee number. Now you can see the employee name along with employee number. Okay. So I'll go with employee email. And with this, we have successfully completed our first scenario where we have utilized the ngFor directive to render the employee list in a dropdown. Now let's move on to the second scenario where the ngFor directive will be utilized. And in this scenario, I'd like to display this same employee list in table format. And to achieve this, I'll utilize the HTML table element with Bootstrap classes table dot table and table border. And the table is divided into two main sections. First is T-head and second is T-body. This T-head section defines the table header containing the column names. So here inside table row, I'll add 4 table header for name, for number, email, and last for department. And next, T-body section defines the table body containing the data. And for each employee object, a table row will be created. And now I'll use the ngFor directive to display the employees array data inside the table. So here I'll use same syntax, let emp of employees. And this syntax defines a variable emp that represents each employee object in the employees array. And now using string interpolation, we will display the value of emp name property for each employee object in the corresponding table cell. So inside td, I'll write emp.emp name with string interpolation. And similarly, I'll display the rest of the properties using the same syntax. So here, emp.emp number, emp.emp email, and last, emp.emp department, DEP. Now let's open the browser and verify that the employee list is displayed in the tabular format. And we can see that everything looks good. In first scenario, we can see the employee list as a drop-down value. And in second scenario, we can see the same list in tabular format. Okay, so we have seen two examples with an array of objects. Now moving on to the third scenario, and here we will explore using ngFor directive with an array. And to demonstrate this, I'll declare a new variable called company list, which holds an array of company names as a strings. So this is the type of string array. And I'll add few company names inside this array. Atos, Capgemini, Accenture, and TCS. Now let's discuss how to display this company list in the browser. And we can render this list in various formats, such as an unordered list, div, buttons, etc. So first, let's try to iterate over the company list inside UL and LI tag using the ngFor directive. So here I'll use UL tag to create unordered list. Inside the UL tag, I'll use a LI tag to represent each list atom. And now I'll utilize ngFor directive to iterate over the company list array. ngFor equals to same syntax, let company of company list. And we can display this company list using interpolation syntax. So here I'll write company. Now let's verify the output in the browser. And as expected, we can see the company list displayed in the browser. I'll just change the class here call to, and for table I'll give call 6. Now you can see the company list with dots because we have used UL tag. UL means unordered list. And if needed, we can easily convert this to an ordered list by replacing the UL tag with an OL tag. And this will result in a numerically ordered list. Here you can see the list in numeric order. Also, we can iterate over the company list using the div element. So for that, first I'll add one more new row. After this, I'll add one HR tag and then I'll just quickly delete the unwanted code from this. And let me correct this with call 444. Okay. Now we will iterate the same company list using a div element. And now inside this first call for div, I'll paste this code. And instead of this li, I'll write div. And this will render each company name in a separate div element. And here you can see the output. Once I inspect this, you can see the each company name in a separate div element. Also, we can iterate over the same list using a button element. So here I'll write button.btn.btn primary. And here I'll use ngFor directive. And then I'll write company inside string interpolation. Now save the changes. Okay, for space, I'll add margin 1 class. And here, instead of 4, I'll add 8. I'll just delete this there. Now save the changes and here you can see the output. So this will generate a separate button for each company name in a list. If I add more data in this company list array, it will also be displayed like here. If I add Tech Mahindra, Google, Amazon, now save the changes. And here you can see the complete company list array has displayed on the web. This we have displayed through ordered list, and this we have displayed through div, and last we have displayed the whole company list through buttons. This means we are iterating over the list dynamically. Okay, so this is how we can utilize the ngFor structural directive in Angular as per the requirements. Now, let's examine how to achieve same results using the @for block or @for new control flow syntax. So to begin, let's revisit the previous example where we used ngFor directive to iterate over the employees array of objects within a dropdown. But this time we will utilize @for block. So for that, I'll comment out this existing option element and implement the same functionality using @for syntax. And @for block allows you to declare local variable directly inside the parenthesis without using the let keyword. So here I'll directly write emp of employees semicolon. And here we must implement the track feature. Track emp variable. Okay. So when using @for block, we need to utilize track feature. Like if you have worked with ngFor directive to iterate over large lists, you might have used track by feature to improve performance. And the track feature helps Angular what changed in a list. So it only updates what's necessary instead of rebuilding the entire list. And the track feature works similarly to track by, but with a key difference. While track by is optional when using ngFor, and the track feature is mandatory when using @for. Now inside this for block, I'll just copy paste the same option without ngFor directive. Now save the changes and check the browser to see if our previous dropdown still populates the entire employees list. And as you can see here, the same employees are listed as options in the dropdown: John, Bob, and Peter. It means everything is working as expected with @for block as well. So what is this @for? The @for block is a feature that repeats a section of HTML for each atom in a collection. And it's commonly used to iterate over arrays or lists and generate dynamic content based on the previous data. And what is the difference between ngFor and @for? Answer is using ngFor directive requires importing the common module in Angular, whereas using the @for block does not require importing any additional modules in Angular. Okay, now next, let's populate the table data using @for block instead of ngFor directive. So let me copy the same syntax from here and I'll comment out this complete tr, and here I'll paste the same @for syntax because we are populating same employee list in this table. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just paste the same tr without ngFor. Now I'll shift F and let's verify the output in the browser. And as expected, the employee table has rendered with corresponding data. Okay, so similarly, we can utilize @for block for the unordered list, but this time we will iterate the for loop over company list array. So let me comment out this, and below this I'll write the syntax of for block. Now here I'll use company of company list track company, and inside this for I'll paste this list without ngFor directive, and I'll apply the same for statement to the another div and button as well. So here let me paste this and comment out this. Copy, paste, and instead of this div, I'll add button without ngFor. Okay, now save the changes. And as you can see here, the same company list is now displayed in the browser with list, div, and button. But this time we have used @for, not ngFor direct. So since we have replaced all instances of ngFor with @for block in this component, so in this case, no longer need to import the common module. Therefore, I'll remove it from the imports array, save the changes, and as you can see here, still our code is working as expected. Okay, so this is how we can replace ngFor with @for. And additionally, I'd like to share two more features of @for block. First is inside the for block, we can declare variables such as here, let f equals to $first, l equals to last, e equals to even, o equals to odd, c equals to count, and I equals to index. And first variable indicates whether the current row is a first row. Similarly, last indicates whether the current row is the last row. Variable even specifies whether current row index is even. Odd specifies whether the current row index is odd. Count displays the total number of atoms in the list, and index identifies the index of the current row. So if you want to know about the total number of atoms in the list, then you can simply print the variable C and you can easily get the total number of atoms in the list. Similarly, if you want to identify the index of a current row, then you can use variable I. Let me demonstrate how to utilize these variables. So here I'll use @if, else if, and else block to create conditional statements. Okay. So here I'd like to change the text color of first row to green. Also, I wish to change the text color of last row to red, and I'll leave the rest of the rows without any styling. So let's see how we will achieve this. So for first row, I'll use variable f to check if it's a first row. So here I'll write f equals to true. Then I'll add the style attribute to change the text color to green. Style color green. Next, I'll use the L variable, else if, and now I'll check L equals to true. I'll add a style attribute to change the text color to red. Here, instead of green, I'll write red. And finally, I'll use the else block to display the rest of the list without any styling. So here, I'll delete this style. Now, with this implementation, I expect only the first row to be green, the last row to be red, and the rest of the rows to have no styling. Now let's verify the output in the browser. And here you can see the first company is displayed in green and the last company is displayed in red color and the rest companies are in black color. Now moving on to the second point, if you are dealing with an empty array, you can utilize the @empty block to display a user-friendly message following the @for block. Like here, after this for block, we can write any user-friendly message inside this empty block. I'll write simply no company found. And let me clear the company list array. Now let's observe the output. Here you can see instead of empty space, we can see the message no company found. And this message provides a clear indication to the user that no data is available. Okay. So what is this empty block? The empty block is an optional section that can be placed immediately after the for block content. And its primary purpose is to display a message or content when there is no items available in an array. Okay, so this is all about @for block, and the advantages of @for blocks are mandatory tracking function and no explicit imports needed. Mandatory tracking function means @for block requires developers to use tracking function, ensuring better performance and minimizing unnecessary re-renders. And no explicit imports needed means, unlike ngFor directive, the @for syntax is automatically included in templates, eliminating the need for explicit imports. Okay, so I hope this explanation helps you to understand the @for and ngFor directive. And in the next video, we will dive into the third structural directive, ngSwitch, along with the new control flow syntax, @switch. So thank you for watching. And if you find this video informative, kindly like, share, and subscribe to FED Learning for quick and easy learning. Thank you. Bye bye.